China's worst ever oil spill. Workers question China's account of oil spill. Dalian, China. 3 weeks after a flood of heavy crude oil fouled many miles of this immense northern city's beaches and rocky coastline. A remarkable, some would say heroic, cleanup effort has scrubbed away most traces of the spill, or so they say. Whether Dalian's government can eradicate damning accounts of a major industrial accident and a narrowly averted catastrophe that could have killed thousands, on the other hand, remains in considerable doubt. Since July 16th, when an explosion and fire ruptured a pipe linking a berthed oil tanker to an onshore storage facility at the PetroChina port, officials here have strained to minimize the scope of the damage. Their version of events, released shortly after the spill, states that a broken pipe leaked some 1,500 metric tons, or about 11,000 barrels, of crude into the bay off Dalian's northeastern coast. It states that the spill occurred after workers unloading oil from the berthed ship accidentally set off an explosion and fire, but the oil was quickly contained before it could enter international waters. And that remains the official story this week. But an investigation by the environmental advocacy group Greenpeace and accounts by 2 experts with authoritative knowledge of what happened make a compelling case for an alternative account. In some kind of ways, this is similar to the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. The Greenpeace report, issued last week, said that as the fire from the explosion spread, large quantities of oil were deliberately released from onshore tanks to avert devastating damage to a tank at the storage facility that was filled with dimethylbenzene, a flammable and poisonous chemical or liquid used to make aviation fuel and solvents. Had the oil fire reached that tank, the report said, the resulting huge explosion could have released a toxic cloud endangering the entire area. This week, 2 experts with detailed knowledge of the accident confirmed that account, with one saying that the cloud could have killed thousands of people. Those experts said that emergency workers deliberately opened release valves on one huge oil tank, fearing the fire could cause it to explode and crack open the tank of toxic liquid. They said the workers decided to empty the tank in part because pumping the oil out would take too long, and because the explosion and fire had in any case disabled a pipeline. So the released oil flowed downhill into the sea. The empty tank most likely was filled with 50,000 metric tons, or between 315,000 and 365,000 barrels of crude oil. Experts said that much of that could have burned off in the fire that night, but other experts said in interviews that they were skeptical that much of the released oil had burned off because heavy crude of the sort involved in the Dalian spill is less flammable than lighter oil. A day spent touring Dalian's cleaned-up coast reveals not only strong indications of a public relations makeover, which, again, sounds something like the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, but also widespread skepticism among residents that the government was telling the whole story on the size of the spill. It couldn't possibly have been 1,500 tons, one Dalian business owner whose workers joined in the cleanup said. A thick oil layer stretched as far as the eye could see, he said, standing above a restored beach. It was so thick that the most effective way of collecting it was to scoop it up in your bare arms and push it into the barrel. Fearful of government retaliation, he declined to give his name. On Dalian's far southern coast, some 15 miles from the accident site, another man stood at a seaside overlook and described the pall that descended over the city of more than 6 million after the pipeline explosion. The sky over Dalian that night was pitch black, and there was an acrid smell and ashes falling, said the man. Even here, there were big patches of oil. It was really serious. A rocky cove there still bore a smear of tide-carried black oil, as well as sheets draped over the rocks to soak it up. By any measure, the spill was easily the worst in China's history, though smaller than some of the world's most notorious accidents. The 1989 Exxon Valdez spill dumped 270,000 barrels of oil and fouled 1,200 miles of the southern Alaska coast. This year's spill in the Gulf of Mexico is estimated at somewhere around 5.2 million barrels. A satellite photograph taken 2 days after the Dalian spill and published on the environmental website skytruth.org suggests that the oil had spread far into the sea from the spill site and was swept along the coastline. The China National Petroleum Corporation, the parent company of PetroChina, states on its website that the Dalian accident released a small amount of oil and sewage water into the bay. But the company's officials did not return a request for comment on the accounts of a much larger accident. In Dalian on Tuesday, cleanup workers and suppliers of cleanup equipment described an unworldly scene, with a 3-foot layer of thick crude stretching in every direction for hundreds and hundreds of yards from the lake, gradually thinning. There appears to have been little, if any, contingency planning for a spill. Once again, that too sounds like the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. The initial team of cleanup workers lacked protective clothes, and some said on Tuesday that they had become ill or developed allergic reactions after being soaked in the crude. They soaked up the oil with straw mats and stockings filled with donated human hair. The Dalian government offered volunteers approximately $44 for every barrel of recovered oil. The ensuing cleanup frenzy was so intense that the government ran out of barrels, creating a black market that increased the barrel price 5-fold. Some 4 or 5-person boat crews said they raked in as much as $14,000 a day. That is a lot of money in China. But the cleanup still is not complete. On Tuesday evening, at a dock in southern Dalian that holds some 100 fishing boats, one man, 41, who made a profit running straw mats to the spill site, said he had gone back to his real business, deep-sea fishing. His last run, he said, was on Monday. We went about 2 nautical miles off the coast, he said. There were still oil sheens there. In other words, it's not over yet. And this was China's worst ever oil spill, which came after or on the heels of the United States' worst ever oil spill. Again, how many worst evers must there be in such so short a time span? And again, Revelation chapter 16, verse 3. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the seas, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. 4. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became as blood. And, again, this is about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations? What kind of world are the children of the future going to inherit? And all these are more signs. In other words, everything that must change quickly or rapidly, and for the better. Because everything is numbered, and everything is connected. And all these are more signs happening day by day all around the world.